Aloha. We're off to Hawaii, and I welcome you on board. I think this story about history is going to be just what you wanted to hear. Our guest today is Anna, last name Anna?
Stevenson.
And when you were a little kid, what was your maiden name?
My name was Anna Hervin.
Anna Hervin. And you grew up?
I grew up in Jerome Prairie, which is about 7 miles from town.
And out towards Wilderville and Wonder and those.
What's this side of that?
Just, what's the story about Hawaii? You grew up here, born in
1915.
1915. You see, I first met Anna at what's called the Depression Years High School Reunion.
Right.
And what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 1934.
Now, why did they lump you with 1930 group?
Well, the Depression classes were from 1930 to 1940, so it includes all 10 years.
Why did they call it that?
Because that was the Depression years.
And some students couldn't stay
Well,
in school.
As we got smaller and smaller, we needed to have more years included.
Now, Mark Axtell, my buddy, said some kids had to stay out of school for a year to help the family earn a living. Then they'd come back, so they might be 5-6 years in high school, taking time off. Now, your family had it tough during the Depression, is that right?
Oh, it was very bad. We had to depend on our eggs, trading eggs for groceries and growing our own crops.
When you say trading eggs for groceries, are you literally going to the grocery store with eggs?
We had a basket full of eggs, took it to Schmidt's grocery, and then they would give us groceries for the eggs.
Barter, truly the barter system. Now, this is when you were all the time growing up. That's the way it was done in the olden days.
And we went to town with a wagon, horse and wagon, because the eggs weren't quite enough to cover our groceries. So my mother would haul a load of wood on the wagon and deliver it in town and get the money for the wood.
Now, who cut the wood?
Oh, my father cut the wood in the wintertime, and then the wagon only held a tier, so it was a small wagon on a one horse.
A one horse, and that's how you got around?
Yes. I never saw Grants Pass until I was probably in my teens at night, because we never came in at night.
Now, how else did you keep body and soul together out there during the Depression?
Well, they butchered their own hogs. We had a smokehouse, grew a garden, and we always had carrots, and always had eggs, always had meat from the farm animals, had chickens. So we didn't even know there was a depression as far as that goes, because that's the way it always was.
You had a big spread, right? Lots of acreage?
No, not, well, in the beginning we had lots of acreage.
About how many acres, do you suppose?
Well, I think there was 40 in one place and 20 in another. And then as time went by, the irrigation company came in and put in ditches, and if you were below the ditch, you had to pay taxes on your property. And all of our property was below the ditch. So the parents couldn't possibly pay the taxes on all this property. So they made a deal with the irrigation company that they would keep 13 acres and the irrigation company took the rest of it.
Oh my, so you went from a huge spread.
Probably about 60 acres. down to 13.
Tough time.
But that's all we figured that they could farm was 13 acres. So
I know the Knutsons owned a big spread, and they lost a lot of land. Same reason, taxes.
yeah,
This happened all over the country. I mean, you were just lucky to be on a farm where there was plenty of food.
yes.
How did you, you're one of how many children in the family?
There was 3 older ones than I was, quite a bit older because my mother had been married before.
Ah, so you had half.
They were half sisters and brothers. Mhm.
And I knew one of them?
You knew Mary Brazil, who worked at the Dorcas.
Yes.
She made a quilt top every week, took it to Dorcas to be quilted, or tied, I should
tied.
say.
And then those quilts were given to those in need.
Oh, yes.
So your sister probably had needs herself.
Had to do what?
She wasn't a wealthy woman,
Oh, no.
and she worked to give back.
She was a widow that had raised 4 boys, or no, 3 boys and 1 girl, 4 children. And she was in the same fix we were. In fact, she lived on top of our property. She'd bought part of it.
I love that word, same fix as we were. You know, we don't hear that word very often anymore, but we all know what it meant.
Yeah, everyone was, there was, if you worked, you didn't get but maybe 50 cents an hour if there was jobs, but.
Well, let's jump from Southern Oregon real quick to why we are looking like Hawaiian kids.
Well, about a year ago, my doctor happened to say, you shouldn't be living alone. And
In 94, he thought maybe it was time you had.
And I was kind of shocked. And I just happened to mention it to my son, and he took it seriously. And so when we went to Hawaii, my daughter had been after me to move over there. And when we went over there, we looked at houses just for fun. I mean, see what about them. And the first house we looked at had 2 master bedrooms.
Wow.
And we thought, oh, this would be perfect.
Why would it be perfect to have 2 bedrooms?
Well, he could have his own space and I'd have mine.
And who is this?
That's my son.
So your son,
Gary.
And you have a 2 master bedroom home
Yes.
that you've not either one lived in yet.
Yes, I lived in it we both lived in it in December and January.
So he is a Eugene, where's he
He
from?
lives in Seattle, or Bellevue.
And your daughter's from Eugene.
Yes,
And-
she went to school in Eugene and then had a house there and worked in Eugene at the tree farm. And then she went to the church and she was working with one of the other fellows there at church, and he went to Hawaii and started a church over in Hilo. And so he wanted her to come over there and help with the church there. So that's how she went to Hilo.
So then she says, come over, Mom.
Oh, she's been after me ever since she got there for me to come over.
Yeah, and you've gone and you've come back. And
Oh, I visited quite often because she was doing the Ironman triathlon.
you mean like we see on TV?
Yes, she did it for 9 years straight.
Oh
And I don't know how anybody ever does it even once.
Now tell about the Ironman, what that is.
Well, they have to qualify first of all each year, so we would go over for the qualifying, and then when they had the race, of course, we had to go back and watch the race, and usually we went back at Christmas to spend
And you
Christmas
run?
with her.
In the marathon,
first of all, they swim in the ocean about, I think it's 2.5 miles or something. Then next they do a bike ride for 100 and some miles.
They don't change their clothes or
No, they
anything.
just
So
run
salty
from one thing to another.
as fast as they can. Salty skin.
And then the last thing is running the, I forget what you call it, marathon, running a marathon.
Now, this same girl is the one who was an honor student at the University of Oregon.
She was honor student
Ev-
in Grants Pass High School and Oregon State both.
Oregon State.
I don't mean University of Oregon. My son went to Oregon State.
Well, what's their names?
His name was Gary,
And her name?
and her name is Mary Jo.
Well, Gary and Mary Jo have decided to really do the geographic and pick up and move to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it was your decision? They didn't twist your arm or anything.
Well, I guess they just thought that was a good idea, and I didn't say no. I just I'm happy where I am and always have been, but I'll be happy with my children too, and especially happy to help my daughter with her church. I
Oh, great.
told
What's
her
the
I
name
would
of-
like to work with the children, and she said that where I'll be then.
and what's the name of her church?
Island Faith Center.
Oh, well, and that's in what? On the Big Island?
That's on the Big Island of Hawaii.
What part of the island is it near? What town is it near?
It's about 18 or 20 miles north of Hilo on the coast.
Oh, so I can expect that you'll get rain. The good Oregon girl will get poured on.
Oh yes, it rains quite a bit.
Well, that's what gets our flowers growing here. You brought this beautiful work of art. Aloha.
That is a coconut shell with a turtle painted on it. Those big turtles, you see them on the beach, oh, they're huge. They're like 2 feet across.
Now,
And
you have seen these things. You've gone surfing, or what do you do on the beach?
well, I don't go surfing.
Oh,
I tried that once, but I couldn't get up.
okay.
But there's always something to do.
This is a Hawaiian lady.
Yes,
You brought
they make those to sell. It's made of paper.
and
And
string here for her hands.
oh yeah, it's.
This beautiful hat.
I don't know exactly how they do it, but they sell them over there.
Her hat has flowers. Mine has shells. Very enterprising people. I got to go to a market. They called it. It was senior citizens on one day a week would come and sell their wares in Kona.
Oh, uh-huh.
Fascinating. I think it had something to do with grandmas, and it was in the mall, and you could go and they would tell you how they made, not the plastic ones, but they'd show
The
you
real
how
ones.
they did their real artwork, and then of course you could buy it, the bead shells. Besides going to Hawaii, have you ever traveled other places?
Well, I've traveled lots of places in the world, from Australia to England, Europe, and down on the other side of Dominican Republic and Costa Rica, several places. China, went to China too.
But you're a working woman. Your husband, you and your husband were partners, is that right?
My husband and we had a trucking business. We hauled lumber to Southern California, and unfortunately at 56, why, he passed away. And then I had to kind of run the trucking business for 3 years until we got out of debt. He had just borrowed $100,000 just before he died.
Whoa.
And the man that was kind of charge of the trucks, why, he told the other truck drivers, he said, I've never worked for a woman and I don't think I'll like it. So don't be surprised if I quit. Well, one of the truck drivers told me, and I don't know, but I went down there and we got along just fine. And I let him run the trucking part, and I run the office, and we got along fine. And later, they bought my house when I moved next door to where I am now, and we just became the best of friends. And his wife is still my friend. He has passed away now too. His name was Ernie McGilvery, and his wife's name is Shirley.
And this story is not too uncommon. We've had the furniture store people interviewing here, and they said when her husband had polio, you know, she just stepped in. There are lots of women who have become managers and because of necessity.
That's the way with me. I wasn't even allowed down there because if I'd go down there, why, my husband would hush the men and say, there's a lady present, because of their talk, you know, they used a few cuss words.
And
so I was never down there except to drop in.
there were a few businesses nationwide run by women.
Oh, yes.
You know, but hat making was one, and dressmaking, and this sort of thing. But some women ran Smith's Variety, just a couple of senior ladies. Do you remember them?
Senior ladies that had businesses.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there
Schmidt
was
sisters.
Nellie Neese that had a hat shop.
Yes.
I remember that one.
You know, they're just a very, there aren't many things that we women, well, I was told yesterday that, you know, as long as I didn't climb on a ladder, they'd let me do the work. And I looked like this and said, excuse me, but my husband doesn't do well on ladders, and so if the eaves need cleaning, or if an antenna needs putting up, I mean, windows washed, I don't call and say, you know, I need to hire a window washer. It's just something we learned. I don't know if
You
it's
just do it.
the pioneering spirit.
Yeah.
Now, I rolled up my pants so they wouldn't get wet in the surf here. But do you go much to the beach? I mean, is that a part of your
No.
what you're looking forward to?
Not a lot of beach. I do like the sun, and I like the weather over there. But and they do have a lot of beach goings-ons, you know, like the church does too. They have a camp out at the beach, and
Oh, it
over a
sounds
weekend or
wonderful. Just wonderful.
they'll swim and everything. There's nice swimming there,
And does it look like a little grass? I mean, a church right out of the storybooks, or?
no, she meets the big gymnasium, and they have to haul all their chairs, and then they put up lattice work around to make it look like a room, and they have very nice sound equipment, and
Well, when I was,
there's very few buildings there because outside of Kona, why, you know, it was just farming country. They had sugar cane, and so it's just villages all over. And these villages don't even have, some of them don't even have a store, or they just have a post office mainly, and then maybe a couple other little businesses.
Well, that sounds a little bit like Wilderville to me.
So it's, you know, it's more like the old times on most of the island, except on the Kona side where it is touristy.
So then, I went to, in Hilo, when I visited my sister who was working there in the Big Island in Kona.
Uh-huh.
We happened to be there when they had that hospital bed race or some crazy thing in Kona. And people were having so much fun, rain or shine. Have you really thought this through? I mean, a farm girl picking up everything. I mean, her house is a beautiful home right on the river, nearly empty of everything. And you're just picking up, you don't have a car.
I don't have a car, but I have lots of wonderful friends that take me where I need to go.
The reason you don't have a car is you have a driver's license, you're perfectly able to drive.
Yes, I've always been a good driver.
What happened to your car?
My car is in Hawaii.
Oh, how did
Shipped it over already because
Uh,
we needed it while we were there. So my son said, well, you ship your car over now and I'll ship mine later. So it's there waiting for me. I didn't mention when I was a little girl, I used to pick hops
okay.
at Schroeder's Hop Yard.
Now, Schroeder is a name I'm acquainted with, but that's a park.
Schroeder Park, but Paul Schroeder had the hop fields right there where Schroeder Park is. And I was about 5 years old, I guess, and I picked hops. And they weighed my hops separately every day.
Okay, this is the little bitty girl with a...
So maybe I picked 10 or 15 pounds of hops a day, just a little sack full. And then at noon, I didn't have to pick anymore. I could go to the river. And
Alone?
that was my, oh yes. I'd go down and watch the fish were jumping all over. They were just, never
You're
see it
talking
like that anymore.
You're talking the Rogue River.
The Rogue River. And during the hop picking time, when they paid the people who picked hops, they paid them in gold.
Really?
So I got a $5 gold piece and 13 cents for picking the whole season.
That's pretty good. I mean, gold at today's market, you
Yeah,
were...
I think it's worth something now, and I still have it.
Oh, you do? How could you possibly keep it all this time? I mean...
Well, my mother kept it for me until after I was married, and then...
You mean when you were 5 or 6 and she'd give you this...
13 cents to spend like I wanted to.
You could get a good-sized bag of candy for 13 cents. Probably.
I didn't have to buy candy. Schmidt's Grocery took care of that.
They'd pass you a little, what?
Oh, you'd always get a treat when you went there.
Oh, really? Oh, those people.
And then my father worked at the sawmill, and when he come home, he always had a little striped bag of candy for me. He worked out at Wilderville and rode the train. The railroad went through our place, the CNOC, the one that was supposed to go to the coast. And so he'd ride the train over to Wilderville and then ride it home. And he always bought something at the Wilderville store for me.
Well, that's where he'd probably catch the train then, huh?
I got what?
That's where he'd catch the train at the Wilderville store?
Well, that's where he caught it, I guess, to come home, and it went through our property. So on Sunday afternoon, when it was, he stayed out there all week. On Sunday afternoon, he'd take an umbrella and we'd go out the railroad tracks and wave that umbrella back and forth for the train to stop and pick him up.
Oh, because there was no, it wasn't like a...
There's no station.
There's no station and there's no cord to pull and saying stop.
No, just go, it went right through our property.
So you'd wave the umbrella, then the train would stop, Dad
Right.
would get on. Did you ever go riding on the train?
Oh, no, not then.
Uh,
I never rode a train until I was about 13, and I went to Corvallis on the train.
why did you go to Corvallis?
Well, I belonged to 4-H, and I won something at the fair, so I got to go to Corvallis for 2 weeks to go to summer school.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful experience because I'd never been out of town hardly before.
What would you study? Well,
They let us take studies, pick our studies, and each study would be 2 days. And one of them I took was newspaper reporting. And so I learned who, what, when, and where when you write a newspaper article.
get those things down here.
And then I took a cooking class, so I figured I'd have some treats to eat. And,
And did it work out that way?
oh yes, they let you eat whatever you cooked.
Now, you probably were introduced to a lot of new things because at home things were tight. You had
Yeah.
the things you grew, the things you raised. What do you remember from those cooking classes?
I don't remember what we cooked. I think we even made bread or something. Loaf. I don't know if it was a cake or bread or what. It was a loaf of something and different things, but
I just love talking to you, and we're about out of time. Do you suppose I can keep you on for another show, and we'll just find out more about what it was like to be a kid, 19 and what?
in the 20s,
19 and 20s. Were things pretty tough?
that, of course, our depression started before the other depression, I think, because
We're
being out
gonna
on the
talk-
farm and
Yep, yep. Thanks so much for tuning in. And thank you, Anna, for being my guest. This is wonderful.